Hi, and welcome to Season 2 of the Team Deacons podcast, a collection of informal conversations between Roger and James Deacons and a guest. We never know where the conversation will take us, so listen in and see where it goes. This episode is sponsored by the Dallas Film Commission, which is dedicated to showcasing Dallas as a premier destination for productions of all sizes. The Dallas Film Commission offers a wide range of support with their expertise in locations, talented crews, top-notch sound stages, and enticing incentives. Meet the Dallas Film Commission at the Film USA Pavilion at the Cannes Film Festival, May 14th to the 24th. This episode is sponsored by Godox, a company that offers affordable, durable, and color-accurate LED fixtures that bring incredible brightness and versatility to any location. Simulate the power of the sun with the new Godox Snow LED Pro lineup of bicolor, high-output LED point source fixtures, or soften things up with their lightweight IP-rated F600 or F400 series bicolor flexible LED mats. You can access exclusive discounts on Godox products with CineKit List at cinekitlist.com, an online community that provides education, professional support, and helps you put the best on your sets for less, with group buys and exclusive promotions you won't find anywhere else. Today we're speaking to a music composer. His list of credits is long. It might be easier to list the movies he hasn't worked on. Among his credits are Dune, The Lion King, Blade Runner 2049, and Thelma and Louise. We're pleased to welcome Hans Zimmer. Hans, thank you.
Thank you for having me, you two ingenious people.
This is fun.
We'd like to start with our question, which is basically, how did you get to where you are today? Is this something that you were always keen on? Were you always listening to music or hearing sound patterns, or was it something you found later?
There are really two answers to that. One is, actually there are three answers to this. One is sheer dumb luck. Second answer is I couldn't do anything else. I mean, my furthest memory from my youth is really music. And we had a piano at home, and that's all I was interested in. And then, of course, by the time I became a teenager, it became the electric guitar because it had certain advantages in, let's say, attracting the other sex.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
And then, curiously enough, I met up with an amazing English film composer called Stanley Myers, who'd written the music, for instance, for The Deer Hunter. And so it was really a very fair exchange. He taught me everything about the orchestra and everything, a lot about film. And he had an incredibly impossible espresso machine that he didn't know how to work, and I worked the espresso machine. So for a couple of years, I was making coffee, but the great advantage was that he worked with amazing directors. And actually, I was thinking about the conversation we were going to have, and really the people I learned from more than anything were the visual people, the DPs. I mean, really the very first thing I did all by myself was a jingle for Terry Donovan. I don't know if anybody remembers Terry Donovan, a great photographer in the 60s, and we did commercials together. And of course, he had an incredible eye. And then the first person I got to work with in film was Nick Rogue, who, of course, for the people that don't know, and that wouldn't be you two, started out as a DP. I mean, he was, first, second unit on Lawrence of Arabia, and then managed to get himself fired of Dr. Zhivago. and right from the word go, I mean, the language that the two of us used was a language of the visual, And then the first real movie I got to do all by myself was for Chris Menges.
Oh, really?
And it was his directing debut. It was a movie called A World Apart.
Yeah, A World Apart.
And I think it was both of our sort of debut. And I always say, I mean, I sort of say this. I mean, this is like long conversations, for instance, I have with Chris Nolan. Before anything happens, I have to talk to the DP. I have to talk about the color palette. I have to know how the two of us can go and create a harmonious, I don't know, a harmonious environment for this story to swim in.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned World Apart then. Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, how did you work with Chris? And it was Peter Bijou that shot World Apart, was it?
Absolutely, it was Pete. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wonderful cinematographer.
Okay, I'm just going to be really candid about this. I don't think it was easy for Pete because Chris would never tell him what to do.
Well, right. I mean, it's interesting because there's two cinematographers, basically, aren't they?
Absolutely. I really wanted to do them. This is all working title, early days of the English film company working title. And we were all friends. And Chris was going to do this movie. And I really wanted to do this movie because I loved, the story was important to me. Chris's work was important to me. But Chris is shy. And I can be very shy. So Sarah Radcliffe and Tim Bevan, who were our producers, sent Chris and me out to a vegetarian restaurant in Soho. Now, it turns out that neither of us were vegetarian, so we didn't really want to be there. I was dying for a cigarette. He was dying for a cigarette. And we sat opposite each other. We didn't really know what to say to each other. and he was interviewing every famous composer in the world. I mean, George Delarue had flown in. I can't remember who the other names was, but everybody. I mean, I didn't stand a chance. But all that happened during the vegetarian lunch was that we didn't really know how to talk about things. So I said to him, look, I tell you what, why don't I go back to my studio and just write something? And so I went back to my little studio in the back alley of, Fulham, made a little tape, dragged it over to Soho. And one of the things that I remember about those days is that every cutting room was either about a sex shop or above a brothel. And, you'd sort of be dashing up the stairs, right? You'd be dashing up the stairs and there's all that stuff going on and you realize it's all entertainment. It's like we are sort of all in the same business. But I was thinking, look, if this is all going to go horribly, horribly wrong, maybe we can write some music for the strippers downstairs. No kidding. So I'm bringing this tape up to Chris, and they put it onto this tape machine, and it's got a really squeaky motor, and he basically can't hear what I can't hear what I did. He can't hear what I did. And I just think he feels so incredibly sorry for me that he gives me the job. And
it worked.
It sort of worked. And, and I was doing it, and he would come down to my studio in Fulham and with his wife, Judy Freeman, who was the sound recordist in our film. I mean, look, everything was an adventure. Thinking back, I just remember, the first day of shooting, the money fell through, and Sarah Radcliffe somehow managed to keep things going on her American Express card, desperately hoping the Hilton Bulawayo wasn't going to phone American Express. And I think we still owe them for the phone bill. Oh, God, the stories. I mean, then Judy this was a film, an anti-apartheid movie. And really, I mean, there was a very serious side to it. I mean, our first AD got killed in a car bomb, and it was the story of Joe Slovo and his family, written by his daughter, Sean Slovo, whose mother, Ruth First, was murdered by the South African regime in a letter bomb. So this was a very personal story to the people involved, and I remember Judy bringing me a tape that had been smuggled out of South Africa of the South African national anthem, the Black South African national anthem, which was obviously illegal to go and sing. And my engineer, Big Al from the East End of London, put it onto the tape machine. We listened to this, and this beautiful choir doing this amazing heartfelt singing and fabulous. And I had written and recorded the end titles and spent every penny of money by this point. But I listened to this and I said to Chris, this has to become our end titles. Absolutely. We have to, this authentic, beautiful piece. And he sort of said, no, I like what you did. I'm going, no, we got to get rid of it. And the only way we're going to ever commit to this is if we wipe what I did. So I said to my, like typical crazy German composer thing, I said to Big Al, put all 24 tracks into record, just wipe what I did.
Oh, wow.
It force us into committing. And he did. And then Chris said, "Can we hear that tape again from South Africa?" And Big Al put the little tape machine into rewind, and the tape was just sucked into the motions.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
And Chris said, "Can we hear it now?" And both Big Al and I were going, "Can you give us a moment? Maybe we can listen to it tomorrow." And we sat on the floor all night with little chinograph, stretching out little bits of tape.
Oh.
And so if you listen to the end titles of A World Apart now, which is that piece with me orchestrating and everything, it keeps sort of speeding up and slowing down where the tape was stretched and everything. But other than now, I don't think anybody ever really found
No,
out.
I didn't. I never knew that. Did you spend a lot of time then on set when they were shooting?
No. I never got to go to Africa.
Oh.
I just but I spent a lot of time in the cutting room, and then Chris spent a lot of time with me, just because I wanted him to. We had to discover things together, and Sean Slovo as well, and we became very good friends. And it ended up that we got to go to the Cannes Film Festival, which was sort of like a huge, big thing, except we were still a poverty-stricken movie. And so rather than staying in Cannes proper, we stayed in the sort of industrial outskirts. And when our premiere came, we dressed up in our, finest, and we walked all the way through the heat in Cannes to the hotel that's sort of next to the Palais de Congress, where they show the film. And there we got into some limos and they did a U-turn and dropped us off. So now we're watching our movie. I am incredibly nervous about everything. And there came a moment where I'm realizing there is not silence in the audience, but there is this other sound. I mean, this place is big. It's about 3,000 people. And you hear 3,000 people very quietly sobbing. And it was the most astonishing sound.
Wow.
So the film went over really, really well. And we were asked if we could stay maybe a few more days, which probably meant that we might win something or the other. But it was mysterious. It was a mysterious message. So yes, absolutely we stayed.
Yeah.
And it turned out, at the end of the day, the jury in Cannes gave our three actresses a wonderful prize, because it really was amazing performances. It was amazing filmmaking on Chris's behalf. Of course, I fell in love with Pete's cinematography. I mean, how could you not? I mean, so I was surrounded by masters at work, and I sort of didn't know what I was doing, but I think I did all right.
And that was really the first film you composed the music on.
Well, I had done things with Stanley Myers. I mean, we co-composed things. We did, again, working title. I mean, we did the first movie, I think, that showed an interracial gay kiss. And it's a movie called My Beautiful Laundrette, with a very unknown young actor called Daniel Day-Lewis. I don't know whatever happened to him. I think he probably ruined his career. But again, I mean, it was that time where all of us were trying things out. It was Channel 4 had just started, and they were great at sort of supporting our craziness. And I remember My Beautiful Laundrette was really made for Channel 4, but they showed it at the Edinburgh Film Festival, and the very influential critic at the time, Alexander Walker, for the Evening Standard, had sort of praised it beyond anything. And so I think Tim Bevan, and I don't know if Eric Fellner, who, of course, you go way back with Eric.
Yeah. Well,
you?
back to the time you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. So we were sort of working in a we were working in parallel worlds, but they said, okay, yes, this 16 millimeter thing can be a movie.
Yeah.
And we thought 16 millimeter was the height of luxury.
Yeah, right.
How different was the process for you from A World Apart to My Beautiful Laundrette? Because they're quite different films, aren't they? I mean, A World Apart, it's kind of more studied, isn't it? I mean, just the whole stylistically. And A Beautiful Laundrette is much more kind of off the cuff. I'm thinking of
off the cuff, but Stephen Frears knew what he was doing.
Oh, no, I'm not saying he didn't.
No, I'm not saying it like that. It's just because none of us knew what we were doing. And to this day, if you talk to Stephen, actually, they all did. Nick Roque as well. They all called me the boy. And Stephen Frears still to this day refers to me as the boy in the back room doing the work. And, I would play something on a keyboard and Stephen's arm would sort of come through between my arms and he would play some other chords, And so, it was a fabulously anarchistic process of how we did that film. I mean, I think there wasn't a note that you could play that in a funny way wasn't political or had some social relevance. We were at the height of Thatcherism. We were at the height of the unions getting killed. Arthur Scargill was fighting for the miners. It was, it was an important time, and it was an important time to make movies. It gave us a voice, and it gave us I don't know. It's like. World Apart became immensely important to me because it really started my career in an astonishing way, and I like being very precise about this because what happened was that Barry Levinson's wife Diana saw the film, loved the film, and loved the music. Went to HMV in the Oxford Street, bought the soundtrack. Brought it to Barry, who was working on a film called Rain Man, and said, you want to listen to this music? And he came to London to promote Good Morning Vietnam. And 11 o'clock at night, in my little back alley in Fulham, I mean, it was really rough. We didn't have a doorbell, so there was a knock on the door of my studio. And there's a man standing outside, and he's going, hello, my name's Barry Levinson. I'm a Hollywood director. I said, you and my mom both. He goes, no. And I looked behind him, and do you remember those old Daimler limousines that no human being ever drove in unless some film company had paid for them, right? So there were two of those wedged down my little alley. And I thought, oh, maybe he is. So I said, why don't you come in? And I showed him how I worked, and he had never seen anything like this, that somebody wasn't writing on paper, but was writing in a computer and with synthesizers and making things up in front of the filmmaker. And he sort of thought that was great. And he basically said, would I consider coming to Hollywood and maybe doing this movie with him? And it was like, it's years later, he told me that he was actually worried that I was going to say no because he thought I was only interested in European art movies. Well, I was going, Hollywood, here I come. At that same moment in time, I was working with a mutual friend of ours, Joe Walker.
Oh, yes, Joe.
Right. So Joe, this is 1988. So Joe and I were on a BBC thing, and I just wanted it to be really, really good. So I had spent all the money and a little more. I had gone £278 over budget. And I was told I will never work for the BBC again.
That's good.
I saw Barry as my savior. Because seriously, it was like I believed them, and of course success is the best revenge. Now I'm doing a lot of the David Attenborough things, and then out of a very different reason, our friend Eric Fellner and Tim Bevan and we just invested and BBC made a veil because we actually want to keep it going as a place for orchestras and for culture and etc. And we don't want to go and build flats and apartments. I think there are enough of those around.
Yeah.
But going back to Barry, and that was the first time I actually set foot in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's quite a thing, yeah.
Big Al from the East End came with me, my trusted engineer, and we didn't know how to do anything really. So because we were so used to working so closely with directors, we said to Barry, "Can we just set up in your cutting rooms?" So the whole score was just a synthesizer, me, and it was a great way of working because. For instance, I mean, there's a storytelling wise, there's a complication at the end of Rain Man, which is it's not a happy ending. The Dustin Hoffman character will have to go back into the institution, and Tom Cruise character has to leave his brother, and so that we had to find this very, very fine balance, which we would do by, and by the way, another great DP, John Seal.
Oh, John,
yes,
absolutely.
So John and I became very, very close, and I would just stare at his compositions and go, God, I wish I could, I hope I can do justice to this. But the way we would work is that, and it was the days before, digital film, digital anything. So Barry would go into his next door into his cutting room with a tiny little video camera and shoot whatever he was doing, bring it over into my room. I would go and adjust the music. Then he'd take the music back over into his room until we sort of found the tone that was, not maudlin, but
right.
We could with good conscience let the audience go and not sell them any cheap goods that it's a happy ending.
Yeah. What would you say the purpose of a score is to a movie?
I always thought, well, it's saying that elegantly that you can't say in words and pictures. Or at least try to say it elegantly. One fails sometimes, but at least you'd endeavor to try. The other thing is, and that's why I think I am sort of the bottom end of your frequency spectrum, the frequency spectrum of the cinematographer. And at the same time, I am, let's take Joe Walker as an example. I mean, Joe and I are basically in a band together. He's my drummer, and I'm I don't know whatever I am at that moment in time, but he is the rhythm, and I either do a counter rhythm but we work very, very closely. So the point is, for me, philosophically speaking, or the task I set myself is to invite people in and basically be doors opening that are all about saying to an audience, you can feel something. I'm not going to tell you what to feel because that would be hideous, but I'm going to go and just for a moment, I'm going to go and sort of open this door for you and give you the autonomy to go and feel something and have an experience. I want you to have an experience.
So does that mean that you need to compose to the cut? Or do you which I know changes all the time, or do you in the beginning, when you see the script, see something in your head and sort of follow that and then adjust it to the cut?
Oh, I'm far worse.
Really?
Years of working with Ridley Scott. I mean, I think that's really where it started. It was always because Ridley's a great storyteller. So I would go, don't show me the script. Tell me the story. And we'd go out, a couple of glasses of wine later, and he'd be telling me the story, and I would know what's in his head, what was important to him. Like when I started working with Chris Nolan, Chris hated showing me the picture, showing me the cut. It was always about he didn't want me to be sort of caged in by the idea of a cut or something like this. He wanted me to just roam freely, and I mean, it sort of came to, no, it always came to a head. But I think the best example was Inception, where I was writing music, Chris was in Iceland shooting, and I'd be sending him these pieces. I'd read the script, we'd talked 1,000 times about the story. I knew it really, 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 really well. And then he finished shooting, and I said, "Okay, all right, great. Send me over the film." And he goes, "I think this is going quite well the way we're doing it. I want you to finish the score, then I'll send you.
Oh, wow.
Then we'll adjust it to picture." At which point, my typical German grumpiness kicked in, and I decided I was only going to send him. I was going to send him music and not tell him for what scene it was. But at the same time, I was incredibly worried that he wouldn't understand what they were for. There was one particular shot, which is Marion Cotillard is on a window ledge. She's just about to go and kill herself, and her shoe drops. And I had this note, which was just like, that was the note that had to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember then, like the first time that Chris showed me, his not rough cut. There are no Chris Nolan rough cuts. Showed me his first version of the film, and the note absolutely hit.
Really?
Shot. I didn't even know that the shot existed. It only existed in the script. But and it was like, yes, this works great. And and another example of that is in Interstellar. There's a very moving, emotional scene where Matthew McConaughey is watching a video of his children, like through the years, and they're growing up, and he starts to cry. And again, Chris is in Iceland. He seems to be spending a lot of time in Iceland shooting, and he's phoning me, and he's saying, "Okay, it's this, and then it's followed by this shot, and it's followed by this shot, and da 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 da." And I'm going, "Chris, this is too complicated. You have to send me the scene. I can't do this." He goes, "Come on, give it a go. If it doesn't work out, I'll send you the footage. I'll send you the footage." So I write it and I send it to him. And I don't know, a couple of days go by, and I'm going, "Oh, how did that work out?" He goes, "2 frames out. We adjusted it."
Wow.
And I said, "Wow, that's pretty great." And he goes, "Yeah, actually, I was really worried about it, thinking, maybe this was a little too ambitious." But it's interesting that when you lock in with a filmmaker, how you feel time the same way. You feel, there's something. You asked me, what does music do in film? I think I don't know. It's when things work. We don't have to use language anymore. We don't have to use words. And it goes into our working process.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the first time I worked with Denis, which was with you on Blade Runner, and it went something like this. I will have gotten it slightly wrong, but in my memory, it's like this. I get a phone call from Joe going, "Hans, what are you doing? We need a bit of help. We're in a bit of trouble." I'm going, "I love you, but I'm going on tour tomorrow, so I can't help you." And I promise you, within 10 minutes, my door bursts open, and it's Joe and Denis coming in, and they're going, "Would it make a difference if we said you and your friend Ben Walfish, who's a brilliant composer, would be doing it together?" And I said, "Yeah, but still, tomorrow I'm going on tour, so show me the movie now." And they sort of looked at each other, and then they said, "Well, we haven't actually looked at the whole thing together yet." So it was actually in a wicked sort of way, it was quite good fun, because usually it's me who has to go and play somebody something, and I turn away from them. I can't look at their face the first time I play to them, because just in
Interesting.
case they're like a slither of disgust runs down, So now Denis was in this position where he had to go and show somebody this film that he hadn't actually looked at it himself, and it was quite late at night by this point, because they had to go and get it, and and we're watching it, and we get to the end of it, and I have no words, and I'm sitting in front, right now you can't see, but I'm sort of sitting in front of my keyboard, so I just started playing. What I wanted to say.
Oh.
And Denis went, "That is exactly what I've been hearing. That is exactly what I've been missing," which basically meant I had to go and do the job.
Yeah, you got yourself into it.
Yeah. No, but it was sort of great, and Ben was fantastic. Ben took these fragments that I was doing, and he came up with great things by himself. I went off on tour, and then I was supposed to have 10 days of rest, and I really needed it. And I promise you, I've never worked so hard in my life.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You know how it is with Denis. It's like he leads with kindness.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you found this. I mean, I've been talking about this actually quite a bit, that most of the directors we get to work with, on a certain level, they're all the same. They're all brilliant. They have great ideas. They have something to say. They are artists. And they seduce you into doing whatever the thing is, the adventure we're going to go on, by their sheer brilliance. But then they're the great exceptions, like Denis, who absolutely not only lead with artistic brilliance, but lead with great humanity and great, just a beautiful soul that constantly, encourages you to want to do your best work. And for me, the other advantage, of course, is that I get to work with my friend Joe.
Yeah.
And you asked me at the beginning, how did I get into this? Joe went to music school. I didn't.
Oh, really?
So,
I didn't know about
my
that.
goodness. Joe never told me that.
No, I'm the one who had 2 weeks of piano lessons, and then the piano teacher went to my mother and said, "It's either him or me." He literally said that.
You never wanted to be an editor then?
No, no. Terry Malick decided, I don't know why, that I should cut this scene. I spent 2 weeks trying to cut this scene.
Trying to edit it.
And it was complete garbage, and I knew it was complete garbage. I took it in, and Billy Weber, our editor, took one look at it and said, "Give me that." And he took, of course, he had access to exactly the same material. And half an hour later, there it was, brilliance, while mine was disaster.
It's interesting.
So, just because I can appreciate film editing, just because I understand the end result, doesn't mean I know how to do it. Great editors are great artists, and that's what and
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that. I can do ordinary and serviceable at best. So why would I want to do that if I know people who can do things beautifully?
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you find all the directors you work with have an idea of the music in their heads, or do they describe? I mean, I've heard Denis, like on Sicario before Blade Runner, he would be going around the production office sort of humming what he felt the music for the film was, just the kind of beat of it. Do you get that, or directors really take what you give them and then work from there, make comment from there?
I imagine it depends on the director.
In fact, they do. I wish they did.
Yeah.
No, it's quite the opposite. I mean, like Chris Nolan or Denis, I mean, for that matter. I mean, they're very... okay, I remember getting a really good sentence from Ron Howard once. We were working on something, and we were running out of time, and we were running out of money, and we just had a meeting, and I played him a lot of things and a lot of ideas, and he's leaving, and just before he walks out of the door, he just turns around. He says, "Just make sure that the laboratory doors don't get shut too early." And so I think that's a wonderful way of sort of approaching it, and that's what I feel very strongly like with Denis, where I just now, on Dune, I mean, I'm unleashing all sorts of things to him, and I watch if it moves him, and I know, for instance, Gore Verbinski. Like I watch his foot. When his foot stops tapping, I know I'm in trouble. But I mean this. Look, I did Pirates with Gore. Actually, I did a few movies with Gore.
You
but
did
one of the
Rango as
big
well, didn't
things-
you? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things we did was Pirates, and there was no brief. It was just like I just went in and went, hang on, they're all rock and rollers. I mean, that's what they are, and Irish jigs. So let me go and try that. Do that with an orchestra and see what happens. Didn't really have any time, and I don't know. You have to. I think you have to come to the party with an idea,
Mhm.
and I find that I'm a great procrastinator. But I'm not really procrastinating. I'm really, 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 really thinking about the thing, and really, really, really thinking about, what can we do and what can we do that's appropriate yet different. Because being original, as Jean Cocteau said, and I'm stealing his quote, original isn't enough. To be good is original enough. So I really try to think it through, and I have a sort of an intellectual framework that I want to stick to.
Mhm.
And in all the movies I've done, I've never had to change the intellectual framework, but I very often had to change the notes, and I very often had to change the pieces of music, quite simply because I wasn't good enough yet. I didn't have it under my fingers. I wasn't good enough yet to actually play the ambition that that I sort of had.
Mhm.
And I mean, my music is I work really hard at getting rid of notes and making it really simple.
Mhm.
I know how to play a lot of notes that are completely and utterly meaningless, but to find something which is the essence of the thing, that kills me every time.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like good camera work that it should help show the story, but you're not conscious of it when you're watching because you're so involved in the story. So you're not even thinking of the music. The music is just taking you further because it's combined with the story, I would think.
Yeah, yes and no, but I mean, again, like great camera work can sort of stand on its own 2 feet. You can mute the dialogue, you can mute the sound effect, and you can mute the music, and you will still have an experience. I mean, I know this from endless weeks of watching dailies with Terry Malick and John Toll, but in fact, very often I find it really great to watch the whole movie with the sound off. Just watch the movie with the sound off and see if you get the story, see if you get the rhythm, see if you get the what the thing feels like.
Mhm.
And that's again, now going back to the beginning, working with people like Nick Roque, working with people like Chris Menges, who obviously were more aware than a writer director about the image and the power of the image. So that's really where that's really my history. That's really where I come from. The other thing is I don't come from television. I grew up. My parents sort of thought television was the end of civilization as we know it.
Probably right.
So the first thing I really saw was Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West. And it was like, wow,
Yeah.
oh, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
that is that's something.
Yeah. So you've also done scores for animation. Is there a difference in approaching animation versus a feature?
I thought there was. Sometimes you do things for all the wrong reasons, and they work out really right. My daughter Zoe was 6 years old, and I've never been able to take her to a
Hans Zimmer
premiere
movie.
because, trust me, a Ridley Scott bloodbath isn't necessarily
The best thing.
So again, this is World Apart. After World Apart, I mean, Disney was saying, "Well, we're doing this movie about Africa and about little lions," and actually, it was called King of the Jungle until somebody pointed out there are no lions in the jungle. And I said, no. Here are some things I don't like. I don't like fairy princesses, and I really, I'm sorry, but I can't stand Broadway musicals. just not my thing. But then I thought, hang on, my daughter, she's 6 years old, and Dad wants to show off. If I do this thing, I can actually take her to the premiere. And I started working on this thing, and the first thing I realized is children catch you instantly if you try to be cute and talk down to them, musically or in any way. So you have to, their problems. A 6-year-old's problem is as profound and as big as a grown-up's problem. So treat it with the right respect. The other thing was my father died when I was 6 years old. And suddenly I'm in front of this cartoon with fuzzy animals, which is all about a dad dying, and how does the kid cope with it? And of course, as a 6-year-old, I'd never, I shut all that away. I never coped with it. I never had to deal with it. I didn't want to deal with it. And suddenly I was confronted with having to deal with something really heavy and really profound in a cartoon. And Lion King, the score is a requiem to my father, and they let me do it, and again, now we're going back to a World Apart. World Apart had given me a police record in South Africa, and we were going and recording choirs in South Africa. And it was 2 weeks before the election where the ANC finally got in. And so there was a civil war going on. And I remember we were having this meeting at Disney. And I don't know, I get really obsessed with the stuff I do. I lose all sense of reality. And the meeting was about who was going to finish the score when Hans got killed or arrested in South Africa. And then finally, Chris Montana, the head of music, said, "You guys are all crazy. He's not going." And I'm going, "Of course I'm going. Of course I must finish. So they wouldn't let me go, and my best friend Nick Rennie Smith, we've been working together for 47 years now. So he went, and the studio they were working at, it became this sort of refuge. The sessions were supposed to be 11 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. But nobody would ever leave because outside was civil war and inside was music and poetry and grace and beauty and safety. So it was recorded under extreme circumstances, but the joy in their voices and the joy, the humanity that these people brought to us, was extraordinary. And when all was said and done, the ANC got in, and I remember back to World Apart, saying to Sean Slover, "Hey, great, I can now finally go and I can visit your dad," and she goes, "You will do no such thing. It's still a really dangerous place." But the wonderful Disney thing that Disney did was, for our little choir in the middle of nowhere, they brought a truck with a projector and put up a screen, very much Cinema Paradiso, and they showed the film.
Wow.
A wonderful gesture.
Yeah.
And then, of course, disaster. It became a musical. You know, it's the most successful musical sort of all time. You know, I failed miserably.
Yeah.
It's absolutely wonderful. It's truly Tamer did such a beautiful job.
Since animation is basically a little bit more simplistic in image
Yeah,
and story and more vivid, sometimes in color, does that
that's the thing.
affect your compositions?
Absolutely, because I don't know. I mean, you know, I think movies have become less colorful, less vivid,
Hmm.
and animation hasn't. So if you really, you know, if you want to use if you want to go crazy and use every beautiful, wonderful gesture that an orchestra and color that an orchestra has to offer you, animation will do that and will let you do that. The other, you know, because the other thing about animation is, I mean, you got nothing. You have to create a world from scratch. You know, so you're allowed to create a sonic world. I mean, for me, the best example is Disney's Alice in Wonderland, which doesn't use any sound effects, and it's all just extraordinary orchestration and extraordinary playing and extraordinary writing. And so that sort of is the benchmark for me of what great animation can do.
Mm.
And seriously, animation should. I mean, it's something I learned very early on. Animation should only be used for those things you can't show in real life. You
Hmm.
know, and of course now with CG, things are starting to look really, really incredibly real. And I did the remake of The Lion King, you know, which was, you know, or what they call well, it's photorealistic. And it was a real struggle because suddenly, you know, the animals don't do, you know, they don't wink like Jeremy Irons winks. You know, you suddenly lose that because the lion, there's not much expression going on, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
There's not a lot of humor going on. There's not a lot of any of that going on, other than in the little cubs. And once they grow up, they become pretty boring.
Yeah, right. Uh, that must have been interesting, though, to have done it both ways.
Yes, it was. I mean, it started off as interesting, and then it became really hard work, and it became sort of great work because what gave it life, what really truly gave it life, what ultimately became the performance. Because these days, you know, you can manipulate everything in a computer. Every line of dialogue is hacked up. You know, nothing is really truly a performance like a stage play, etc. But what I did with the musicians was we spent 4 days working the way you normally work, which is you record one little piece, you know, one little cue after the other. You know, you learn it, and you then record it, and you play it, and you play it a few hundred times. And then we had one day, I on purpose, I had one day left over, and I said to them the night before, okay, you've now learned everything. Now put all your scores in order. Tomorrow we're going to play the whole film from top to tail without stopping, and we're going to make it a performance. I mean, the room was, you know, overcrowded with musicians anyway, but I still managed to get some chairs in there and get some people like to pretend to be, you know, well, not pretend, they were an audience, so that we could actually go and perform this thing and give it life. You know, give it life, and if you made a mistake, you couldn't go back. You know, and to be really honest, when great musicians make mistakes, it usually just adds color to the thing. You know, they never get it that wrong.
That's interesting.
So that was a lovely approach. I mean, I had sort of done it before once. I mean, I did an animated movie called Spirit about a horse. And I did it with Brian Adams. And it was really sort of like a band score, rock score. So I said to Jeffrey Katzenberg, hey, why don't, in the premiere, why don't we just play it live? Which seemed like a really good idea at the time, you know, and
One
it
of
nearly
those kind
killed
of
me.
ideas.
But other than that, it was great, you know. no, but it works. But it gives you there's an energy if we can be the only people on a film who can go and perform from the first frame to the last frame. It something happens. It does add something.
Mm-hmm. But if you're starting working on it at the beginning of a film, I know I'm sure different films are different, but if you're starting, you're getting your ideas.
Beginning's the same.
Well, but if you're doing that and then during the shooting, certainly things change and the script changes and the characters change a bit, because it seems to be at least when we're working, a very organic process, and the film kind of finds itself. So are you watching dailies and taking that in?
I'm watching dailies when Chris Nolan allows me to see dailies.
Yes,
Sorry,
right.
I'm just being catty.
Yeah.
But the thing I've been hunting down from the beginning, before any of you go out into wherever you're going to shoot this film, is what's the subtext? Why are we making this movie? What's the point? Why are we all here? You two know exactly what I'm talking about. Film is 2 hours long, but it's been years of our life to get it to that point. I was talking to Chris about the work we've done when we did Batman Begins in 2004, and now it's 2024. So it's right now. I'm not working with him, of course, but it's Ludwig, who's a friend, and I love the work he's doing because I'm working with Denis. But the thing is, this, and actually I learned this. I was the lowliest assistant coffee maker on The Last Emperor. So I was working for Bertolucci, and there was a like something had gone wrong. It wasn't my fault. It was just just the normal chaos, Italian chaos. It's like it was fabulous. And I remember exactly what it was. And to this day, I don't know what he was asking for. He was asking for the Chinese death bells. I had no idea what Chinese death bells are, and to this day, I don't know what Chinese death bells was. And I said, "I'm really sorry. I'll bring them right over." And they were over at Pinewood, and I recorded some crazy bells, and I'm bringing it over. And I get, he'd been very angry that he didn't have the Chinese. And I get to the gate, and he's pacing up and down.
Ooh.
His hand behind his back. And I get off the car, and he comes to me, and he gives me a box of chocolates. He says, I'm sorry. I have to never forget the fact that even though I'm the director and you're being paid, the seconds of your life are ticking away. And I need to be, I need to be respectful to that.
Oh, wow.
Oh, nice.
And I thought that was, yeah, here's the thing. I don't know, Roger, I wouldn't trade this for anything else.
Yeah.
There's this life that we get to live, these stories we get to tell, these people we get to meet, these dreamers, or the dreams that they allow us to dream, or that they allow us to be part of. I love this, and I've always loved it, and and I remember John Seal retiring, telling me he's going to retire. And the next time I look, he's doing Mad Max.
Yeah,
I remember
great
that.
It's like
retirement.
It's like revolutionary images.
Yeah.
And I'm going, what happened to the retirement thing?
Yeah, we joked
like,
with him about that. Yeah, exactly. He did well in his retirement, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, so much for that. We can't stay away, because as long as they allow us to dream, we're going to be dreaming.
Yeah, it's a drug. It's definitely a drug.
How do you
It's a good drug.
Yeah.
How do you do so many movies in a year? Do you ever sleep? I mean, your credit list, there's so many in a year.
These days I sleep. Hang on a second. Yes, 1988, the year I did Rain Man, I did 14 projects.
Good
But in
Lord.
those days, there was a lot less music in movies, But the other thing was, my daughter was born. I had to earn a living. It's like, Rain, trust me, My Beautiful Laundrette might not have been the best payday I ever had. Nor was The World Apart. And still, in emotional currency, they were tremendous. You know. In fact, I remember, when we were doing A World Apart, and I asked what's the budget, and being told, actually, we're not going to tell you this time because we know you're going to take all the money that you're actually going to supposed to have for yourself, and you're just going to put it into making it sound good, and your wife is pregnant, and you got to be responsible.
Yeah.
So the other thing I found is like, you hear all the horror stories about Hollywood and everything, but on the whole, I've been treated with great respect and great kindness.
That's good. That's
good.
really good.
Do you miss, though? I mean, you do keep referring back to World Apart and Beautiful Laundrette. Do you kind of miss that sort of anarchic time in some way?
I still do it. I mean, look, it's not actually. It's been a while.
Or you create your own anarchy.
Trust me. 12 Years a Slave is probably, what wasn't probably seen as a blockbuster type movie. So I still do those.
Yeah.
I'm working on a film right now where I think I'm paying for it. But but it's interesting, and it's anarchy, and it's I get to invent things, and do I refer to them? They just happen to be very much on my mind at the moment because I'm doing projects with Eric Fellner and Tim Bevan, and it's every once in a while one of them will mention probably something foolish I did 30 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's very much on my. The other thing is, while you're in Santa Monica, I'm in London, and right now I just like being back in Europe.
Yeah.
It's like I can't even tell you why, but it's just, I don't know. The other thing I always did. I never stopped working with the English musicians. So I'm very at home here as far as that is concerned. And there's a sound that I get that I can't get anywhere else. And there's a shorthand I can use as well. It's like, plus there's this sort of thing where, because they played on everything, I mean, if people always talk about the Hollywood sound, and I'm going, what is that? Is that Star Wars? That's recorded in London. Is that Raiders of the Lost Ark? That's recorded in London. Lawrence of Arabia? That's recorded in London. I can go on for like a long while and go, the Hollywood sound is very much something that happened here and still happens here. Think of Bond. I mean, so for me, I love this idea that I turn up in front of the orchestra who has truly played everything, played for every composer, and I got something new for them that they've never done before. And they come in and they go, I don't think that's going to work. Let's just have a go. Let's just see what happens. And then somebody coming back in going, whoa, that's pretty cool. Never thought of that.
Okay, there's a lot of articles you read these days in the trades or even in the main newspapers about AI and about how studios are expecting to use AI to score their television shows in particular. I mean, how are you feeling that sort of technology is changing the way you work?
When I started, I was the sort of the kid in London who was really good with synthesizers. And all the musicians were going, oh my God, they're going to do us out of work, etc.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't. They just became another tool. AI, I think, is on a different level. Is it really capable of, again, what I was talking about earlier, which is that originality isn't just enough. I mean, there has to be. Music is this weird thing that within one phrase, I can either move you to tears or I can well, if I'm good, I can move you to tears, not in a sentimental way, but in a truly emotional way, in an honest way. Or I can make you feel happy about something in one phrase, in a tiny phrase.
Mm.
I can make a human connection,
Mm.
and I'm not sure if you see. I don't know. Maybe the question needs to be asked the other way around. Are we really going to become that insensitive that we're going to take the sentimentality and or the fake emotion, the plastic emotion that a computer is going to offer up to us, and see that as something deeply profound and moving? Because that's at the end of the day, that's my part of the job, to try to dig down into the human condition, and figure that out.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. I would say that, about a photographer, the great photographers, why do their images, their framing, that just their sensibility, why do they affect you? Do you think that AI can create something equivalent? I mean, personally, I don't. That's why I was asking you the
No,
question about music.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either. I mean, it's like, God, there's a Czech photographer that I absolutely adore, and of course I can't remember his name right now. Do you know who I mean?
Joseph
I mean, the
Kadelka?
black and white, huge black
Yeah.
and white,
Mm.
and sometimes there are shots of just a tree, or just a shot of like tram lines, and they move me. I don't, and I don't know. They're not supposed. I don't know what the magic is that he
Right.
brings to it,
Right.
whereby it moves me.
Right. That's what amazes me sometimes. You can get a composition like that. I mean, Denis we shot this shot on Prisoners, which was just a push into a tree. But
Yeah.
combined with the music and the moment within the film, it spoke of something that you couldn't put your finger on, but it was something that really touched your humanity. You know what I
Right. No,
mean?
no,
Yeah, and it's really extraordinary, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, should I tell you this? Because I might tell you. It sounds all weird and wrong and whatever, but when Terry Malick and I were working on Thin Red Line, it took forever to like find a language for it, a musical language for it. Actually, Terry and I had a huge argument. Terry's very, very, he really knows his stuff. I mean, he's a great philosopher. He knows everything about music. He brings scores in and point at certain, like look at what Stravinsky does here. We had this argument just about an interval. In other words, in your case, that would be a color, right? I said it should all be these minor third intervals, and he goes, "Oh no, it should be the pure fifth." And the pure fifth to me is white noise. It represents every frequency spectrum. So I'm going, well, now, Terry, no, so go back to my place. I do this piece, and it breaks every musical rule because it does everything. You're not supposed to do parallel. It's all parallel. It's all these minor thirds, da 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 da. And it's a Sunday, and I know Terry's in the cutting room because just like me, that's where are you going to find us? You're going to find us in our happy place. So I go over to the cutting room and I drag this thing in, and he listens to it and he goes, "Okay, let's put it up against picture." And we put it up against this scene, this shot of this village, and suddenly you see light streaming in that you didn't see before, and we go, "No, that can't possibly happen." So we take the music out, and you see less light. And so now we think we're mad. So we're at Warner Hollywood, and there's like nobody around. And we go outside, and we find somebody, they're cleaning, and we ask them to come in and have a look at this because we can't quite believe it. But that piece, well, it became the foundation for so much of that film, but it became this sort of weird thing where it did something to the image. It really did. You saw more in the image than you ever did before. And we're not talking about a bad DP here.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I think that's really interesting. To me, the peak of that kind of technique is Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West, because the combination of the image and the sound. I mean, it's operatic, but it's also very affecting. It's not just there for show, is it? It's incredible how it works together.
No, absolutely. You know, and the other thing was, they took their time. They were very aware that if you have a shot on a very big screen, you know, I mean, this is one of the problems with editing. If you're editing, you're inevitably looking at a small screen, and your eye takes in information very, very quickly because it can wander across the screen very quickly. If you're on a big screen, and that's why it was fun working with Terry, because we would check things back constantly on the big screen. It takes you much longer to take everything in. But, you know, then the way Leone would go and just have the eyes, and you would get everything.
Yeah.
But he would give you the time to let your eyes wander, you know, however long it takes, you know, to take in the shot. You know, and these beautiful compositions. And why are we in such a hurry these days? You know,
Good question.
Making a movie and putting it out there to the world, I mean, it should be a gift. It is a gift. You know, it's like, it doesn't cure cancer. It doesn't make the trains run on time. It doesn't solve your economic problems. It doesn't do any of that stuff. But what it does is, you know, it gives us a bit of humanity. You know, or maybe it gives us the best of, when it's really good, it gives us the best of who we can be as people.
Yeah.
And unifies us as well, I think, in some way.
Totally. I mean, that whole Chris will, I don't know if he'll deny it or if he will tell me I'm wrong, but I think I always thought Inception was about shared streaming. I thought the whole movie was about cinema in a funny way. That idea that when you come together and the lights go down, you know, and I don't know, I mean, in the old days when the curtain would go.
Yeah.
And the screen, you know, whoa, you know, and we all got to experience something at the same time. We all got to dream this dream, you know. And it was fabulous. It still is fabulous, you know. And no, I'm not as obsessed about, you know, I think digital technology is fabulous. You know, it lets me do things that
it's a tool
I could only dream about. It's a tool, exactly. You know, and yes, my first digital recordings were really rotten. It's because I didn't know how to manipulate the tool.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's
very
great.
good.
Yeah. Thank you for this.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Well, I never shut up. Yeah.
No, but it's great. It was really nice. Yeah.
You unleashed me. But I think it's interesting because we never. One of these days we will probably. I would hope we can have this conversation, because I really do feel there was like a parallel track we were going on, which was started off at a very particular time. And you know, you said, why do I go back thinking about A World Apart, and why do I think about My Beautiful Laundrette and Sammy and Rosie Get Laid and all the other things we were doing in those days? Because I think they were sort of the rocket fuel that propelled us forward, and that gave us a bit of grit and gave us a bit of, you know, we make beautiful things, but still there's a little bit of dirt under the fingernails. You know, that needs to be there. And that stuff comes from that time. You know, still want to go and fight the system, just a little bit.
Exactly.
Not tired of it. And I think it's necessary more and more. I mean,
Great.
things are grim, and we get to do something magical and beautiful.